Okay, hi everybody. As I said in your announcements this week, I'm going to go over just a little overview of Adobe InDesign. We have been working in Illustrator for pretty much the last few weeks. So now we're going to start a new program, which is very similar to Illustrator. It's just a little different with certain tools. So I just wanted to do a very quick overview of the basic tools in Adobe InDesign and show you exactly where to find those tools so we can get started with your upcoming project this week, which will be your magazine cover. So Adobe InDesign is basically a layout and page design software for print and digital media. And designers use InDesign a lot to lay out all kinds of different projects, multiple page projects like magazines, ads. You don't have to necessarily do, more than one page. If you are laying out an ad, you could do so in InDesign as well. It's a great way to organize your type because it is very type friendly in regards to, grids, and we'll be getting into that this week as well. But so this is InDesign, and it's very similar to the Adobe other software applications like Illustrator, which you were just working in, and Photoshop. They all pretty much work together. And you will notice very similar attributes as far as like their panels, where the toolbar is, because it's, cross-platform with each other. But in regards to what Adobe InDesign is used for is a little different than Illustrator. Illustrator is a vector-based program, and this is a page layout program. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you, I created a new document here. This is just an 8.5 by 11 artboard. And just like in Illustrator, you would go up to File, New Document, and you would set your settings just as you would in Illustrator. You can see pretty much it looks very similar to Illustrator. The only difference is you have the option for facing pages, and we'll get into that in the other videos going forward because that's a little bit more advanced. We will be designing a double page spread feature, so we'll be talking about that in future videos. But as you can see, it pretty much has very similar specifications when you create a new document, just like Illustrator. Also, you have your toolbar here, and your panels pretty much all act very similar to Illustrator. If you don't see anything that you are looking for on your actual artboard, you can go up to Window and choose, say for instance, you're looking for type in tables. Maybe your character panel is not up on your artboard. You can definitely find that under Window. So it's pretty similar to what you have in Illustrator. Here's your color swatches, for example. I don't have that up, but if I select that, it'll pop that back up here. And just like in Illustrator, you can organize these any way that you wish based on your preferences. If you kind of want to have all these panels on here, or if you like to streamline them, you can actually tab them together just like I just did here. Okay, so basically, designers use InDesign again. When I was working for publication companies, what we would do as designers for, say, a magazine cover is we would get the feature story, and then we'd have to build upon that for our cover. So we would choose a main image from the feature spread to put on the cover, as well as just feature copy and topics that will be inside the magazine. But typically what we do in a good habit is, and you guys don't really have to worry about this because we're just focusing on InDesign, is if you have any graphics that you want to bring in here that are a little bit more, I say, sophisticated, you can do that in Illustrator and bring that into InDesign so that you're placing all of those more intricate elements, design elements. So say if you have like a little swoosh that you want to put down below to put copy on top of. And you want to do that in Illustrator, and you can always import that into your InDesign layout and then add your text in InDesign. Say if you want to alter your image first before you even import it into InDesign for your cover, you would obviously use Photoshop for that. So typically what designers do is they go back and forth with each program based on what they're doing. So you would adjust your image in Photoshop based on the size, specs, and then also color mode, any revisions that you need to do. And then you would save that out as a TIFF file and place it into your InDesign file appropriately. And then you would add your text in InDesign. That's a pretty common thing that designers do, just kind of using all those programs. Okay, so you have your toolbar. Let me just go over some basic tools in here. As you can see, you have your ruler set up here. If you want to, if you don't have that on your side vertical and horizontal sidebars, just go up to under view, just like in Illustrator, and you can show rulers. Mine's hide rulers right now. You can also view your grids and guides here. So it pretty much is the same in regards to where you can find everything. There's just a few, obviously, different menu items up here, but don't get overwhelmed with it because we're not going to be using everything in here. We're just going to go over some of the basic stuff. All right, so you have your selection tool, and this is just like you see in Illustrator. If you were to, say, for instance, draw a shape, and that shape, you wanted to kind of move it around, you would use your selection tool to move that around, just like you would in Illustrator. You can resize it. You can do pretty much just like an Illustrator, rotate it, do all kinds of stuff like that. Now, your other direct selection tool is just like an Illustrator, where you can actually select the anchor point and you can just manipulate that anchor point just like in Illustrator. So you can see the commonalities in the tools here as just like in Illustrator. All right, some of these I will not be going over because they're a little bit more involved and something that we're not going to actually go over for this project that we're actually going to use for this project. So I'll just skip down here to the type tool, which is the big T. And again, if you have a little corner triangle on any of these tools, that just means that there's more tools underneath that. So underneath the type tool is the type on a path tool, and that's a very similar tool to what is in Illustrator. It's just in InDesign. So type tool, just like in Illustrator, if you click on your artboard one time, it's not going to do anything. It's a little different than Illustrator. You actually have to draw out a copy box with your type tool in order to set your type. So it's kind of like this, set up new type. But it's very similar where you can select your type, go over to your character panel or up above, and you can change your font. It's just very similar to Illustrator, size, all that good stuff. And what's nice about InDesign is you can really set your copy boxes and your type in an organized way, a little bit easier in here than you can in Illustrator. And it's kind of hard to explain that until we get maybe deeper into your double page spread next week. So it just has a lot more different settings that you can when you look at a magazine, there's a lot of copy, there's a lot of subheads, a lot of body copy. So in InDesign, there are settings that you can create that helps you keep everything consistent. So, you want the headlines to all be, or the subheads all to be the same size, for instance, the body copy to be very consistent throughout the magazine, because if it shifts, it kind of looks odd and it's not consistent. So you want to make sure that you're saving your time and not going through, each and every step over and over again for every page. So InDesign is a great program to keep everything very consistent, and you can save your settings in order to do that. And we'll go, like I said, we'll go into that a little bit more detail when we set up your double page spread. But just like the type tool in Illustrator, you can select this. You can like I said, change the font size, change the font. You can do everything that you can in Illustrator with that. You can change the alignment up here if you go to paragraph, and you can change the color, which is shown here in your fill. So there's a lot of very similar things that you can do. That's the type tool. You have your line tool, and that's just basically what it is, just like an Illustrator. You can draw some, lines to maybe divide up some space in your, on your layout. So that's a simple tool there. You have your pen tool, just like in Illustrator, where you can actually, create certain things. Like say if you were working on a magazine and you just needed a little swash down here, that could be definitely something that you can use, where you can create a very cool little, let me show you here, a little swash down below, just little design elements that you can have filled with a color, and it could go over type. So that's pretty similar to, Illustrator, where you can actually go take your direct selection tool and change those anchor points in here. Oops. So that's kind of a nice thing about these programs, is they're, pretty similar for the most part in the tools that you're using. Okay. So that is the pen tool. We have the pencil tool, and that's more of a free form tool, for drawing. And so if you want, instead of the pen tool where it's a little bit more strict and where you're selecting your points, you could do more of a freehand pencil tool would be your option. And then you have, I'm going to skip here because it's a little different to explain. I'm going to skip down to your shape tool. And this is just like an Illustrator. You have your rectangle, your ellipse tool. So you can go in here and, create your shapes. And this is nice to know because you can do very simple elements in here. If you need to, say, to call out, something in your magazine, you can call out with text there with just a simple shape. You have your scissors. It's just cutting through some shapes if you're creating shapes. And let's see what else. Your zoom tool, just just like an Illustrator, you have a couple ways to do one thing. So for instance, you can use your zoom tool to zoom in and zoom out, or you can hit the command negative or command plus to zoom in and out. And also if you're zoomed in, just like an Illustrator, just a little tip here, which is kind of nice. If you're zoomed in and you're working very close on to say your anchor points you're adjusting, if you hold down the space bar, this will bring up a little hand. If you want to kind of navigate around your artboard this way, it kind of saves you the time of zooming out and zooming back in again. Just like in Illustrator too, you have the fill and stroke colors down here. And pretty much everything else is, a little bit more, we won't really be working with a lot of these tools, but you can see how you can set this up based on your preference with how big the box is. If you want just one column, or if you want it to be horizontal, not vertical, you can change it there. So that's based on preferences, but that's pretty much the main tools that we will be working in for this magazine cover and for this project this week. So I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up of, where everything is. Another thing that just I want to point out too, to have up on your screen when you're working is your page panel. And this will become very important whenever we start your double page spread, because we're going to be adding it to your cover. But it should look similar to this. Just kind of ignore the A parent sign here. I'll explain that as we go forward into your spreads, what that means, because we will be looking at master pages and all that good stuff. So, but just wanted to kind of keep that in mind. Just all you need for your magazine is one page to start, and I will be doing a separate demo on how to start your actual magazine cover. But this is just to show you where everything is in general. Up above here, you do also have your preferences. So you might want to check out your, say for instance, units and increments, and make sure everything is in inches for your horizontal and vertical ruler units. I would check that first before you even start anything. Sometimes that's set at pixels or points. You have your grids here as well. You also have, spell check, just FYI, and also in Illustrator, you have a spell check option. So just make sure that you're aware of that whenever you're creating your projects, so that you're not, skipping over the spell checks there. Everything else, just the saving is the same for the most part. When you do save your InDesign file, it's going to save it as, kind of looks a little strange. I do here. Demo. You're going to save it as a document. 2022 would be the document, and then the actual file name that will be the native InDesign file will say demo.indd, so that you know that that's an InDesign format. That's the native format file. Just like Illustrator would be, demo.ai. So AI is the native file for Illustrator. So that means you can go into that file, into that program, and you still have all of your layers, so you can edit it. If it's a flat file, that would be a PDF, for instance, you can't edit that. So let's see. You have your layout pages, margins, and columns. You can change this here as well. And we'll talk about that as we go forward to setting up your cover page for your magazine. So, and then just under type, this is just another way to get to your character panel, your tabs. And we'll talk about character styles and paragraph styles too next week. Those are important because that will help you be more efficient and keep everything consistent in regards to your type and your settings. Everything else is pretty much what we'll go into some of these settings a little bit deeper as we go into the demo. So I just wanted to do this quick overview of just the basic InDesign tools and just settings to be aware of.